most people aren't actually aware of what their values are, how they engage upon them in their life. Sure as hell aren't necessarily thinking and introspecting, asking, why did I react that way? Why did I feel so much tension in my body when my partner said that? Or why did he get so upset over that? Why did he freak out over that one thing that I said? Something's going on there, right?
I got to be real here. I don't really care about whether your partner thinks you're self-aware or not, because I don't think they know. What I do care about is how do we actually help our listeners improve their self-awareness? Because quite frankly, I do like that quote, you can only meet your partner as much as you've met yourself. And I think some people feel very lonely mentally, emotionally, and spiritually because their partner hasn't met themselves.
Conscious couples, business partners, and individuals, welcome to the Conscious Couples podcast, where we share our life, love story, and relationship expertise to help you consistently cultivate the most magnificent relationship possible.
Never again will you feel hopeless and alone in your intimate relationship challenges. We'll help you have the courage to be your authentic self, communicate effectively, and constructively resolve conflict.
Having accumulated thousands of hours coaching, speaking, podcasting, and hosting live events with conscious couples all over the world, Alan and I are here to guide you in all things relationships.
Thank you again for tuning into the one place where it's not about you or me, it's about the we. Conscious couples and individuals, welcome back to another episode of the Conscious Couples podcast, where we talk all things intimate relationships. This is going to be a part 2, episode 204. Does your partner have low self-awareness? Part
2.
Nice.
Dos.
Yes. Before we jump into this episode, I want to give a huge shout out and thank you to Next Level Podcast Solutions for producing this show, and I believe 86 others now. So still growing.
Choo choo.
Nice. Love. Thank you for that. So before we jump into this episode, as always, love, this is ladies first. What is your intention for this episode? Because on the last one, we realized self-awareness is a whole thing.
It's a whole thing.
It is very critical in an intimate relationship, like maybe one of the most critical things. And so we decided to do a part 2 on it.
Yeah. So my intention for this episode, the second part of this one, is to even deepen our own awareness about how critical self-awareness is. And by the end of this episode, it is my intention to help every single listener scroll away, jump away from this episode, having a baseline understanding where their own levels of self-awareness are, and have 3 pillars that they can evaluate themselves with through introspection, which we'll talk about, so that they can grow together, not apart. Because one of the things about self-awareness is it's the meta skill, which is the skill under the skills, meaning usually below the surface, you're not seeing this, but it's one of the meta skills of powerful, intimate relationships and conscious coupling.
Self-awareness, there's a study that shows that you have on your Remarkable by Dr. Tasha Eurich.
Orich, I think, is how you pronounce the last name.
Orich.
Eurich.
And 3-year study. And they found that people wildly overestimate their levels of self-awareness. And so it's like the humility thing. I'll tell this story briefly. So when Emilia and I first got together, this was 6 years ago, probably 3 months in or something like that, she said, "You're the most humble man I've ever met." And I had never been called humble before. I know. Isn't that wild? And I now understand some of the implications as to why that is. But I said to her, I really appreciate it, thank you. But I've never identified as humble. And she said, "Alan, that's exactly what a humble man would say." And I was like, oh my God.
Oh, light bulbs.
Am I humble? And I actually realize now, for certain I am. I just don't come off that way because I'm so confident in other people's eyes.
Right.
Sometimes I seem arrogant, actually. And to the insecure, unaware eye, I might appear arrogant, but I'm the one reading the books every day, right? So
every single day.
But that's another paradox of when you say you're humble, you're automatically not. Well, when you say you're self-aware, apparently you're automatically not as well.
That's exactly the paradox here. So across 3 years, like Alan mentioned, Dr. Tasha Urich, who is an organizational psychologist and a researcher and a bestseller, who, if you want a book to roll out of this, I cannot fully endorse it because I haven't read it, but the research I have read. And what she did was essentially the clinical equivalent of a self-awareness study, where she gathered up 50 people that were totally quote unquote unaware. And in a room of those leaders, she had asked them, to rate themselves on the elements that make up a great leader, or, someone who is quote unquote self-aware inherently is a great leader. And when she asked, what, if you were to rate yourself, where would you rate yourself on these elements? And all of them rated themselves above average.
So not all of them were above average?
All of them rated themselves above average.
Nice.
But then when she presented some of the findings on if they actually were self-aware.
Didn't you say 95%?
What she showed was exactly that is the paradox of self-awareness. When you rate yourself, if you have the chance, our ego likes to really put us above average on all of these elements of awareness. And what the reality is, and what the research really shows, is that to that percentage, 95% of people will rate themselves above average on self-awareness. So if I were to ask other people, right, do you believe you're self-aware? Conviction is underneath. Yes, absolutely. The reality of the findings, though, in the research is that 10 to 15% of people are actually self-aware.
Here's the thing. This is a statistical study. I need to make this as clear as possible. This is based on a sample set of the population.
Correct.
And when you say are actually self-aware, there's a line in the sand of what that means.
And there are levels.
Yeah, it's not like you're self-aware or not. There's a spectrum.
Incredible
And there's a bell curve.
Yep.
So,
and in what area, we could go into the nuance, but what I thought was fascinating, and this is the paradox that we just kind of sprung out into, and I want to get into this, is I have in quote, the least competent people are the most confident about their abilities and performance. And when we think about this in the context of relationships, you and I mentioned in our last episode lightly on the Fair Play documentary of how when a couple is sat down and the male in the relationship is asked how much of the household duties does he do, he again rates himself above average, cue the self-awareness, when in reality, if you actually parse apart the woman and how much she actually does in the household, it's completely disproportional and exceptionally less than what he rated himself.
So in other words, he thinks he does more than he does.
Exactly.
Right? Typically.
Yep.
Typically. Now, here's the thing.
Yeah.
And I need to make this as clear as possible. Some people who think they're self-aware actually are. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, but very few.
If I asked you how self-aware you are, like, are you self-aware? You would never say no. No chance.
This is true. This is true. But I wouldn't go around saying, hey, everyone, I'm the most self-aware person.
Yeah,
I actually think to myself, I have so much more about my own awareness that I need to dig into. And that's the paradox right there. I am probably one of the most self-aware persons that you would ever meet. But I would never, quote unquote, self-identify
just
unless
like
you cornered me into that. Exactly, exactly.
I've found it really difficult to... This is what we do for a living. We're both coaches, trainers, and podcasters. Mm-hmm. I told Kevin this the other day. I said, dude, we need to be self-aware for a living. Like, we have more conversations. So we do a podcast episode every week at Next Level University. All of them are about success and personal development topics. So it's our job to have these deep conversations. We have more deep conversations in 1 week just from the production of the podcast than a lot of people do all month or all year.
Right.
So I've gotten to this point because we did this in book club once, and there was a woman in book club. I'll keep anonymous. And in one of the books we were reading, it said this paradox of when you think you're self-aware, you're actually not. And she called me out. She said, well, you think you're self-aware. And I said, yeah, but this doesn't apply to me. She started laughing out loud. I kid you not. But I actually said, no, I'm not joking. Yeah. And I know this sounds...
That sounds so arrogant to someone.
It does.
Right.
But I don't care if it's accurate.
But here's the thing. They're not thinking about what creates that conclusion.
Yes. It's not just out of thin air. I'm not like, hey, I'm self-awareness. Like, this is all I do.
If you weren't self-aware, you wouldn't be able to do what you do for
That's
others
what I'm
in the
saying.
world. Right?
Exactly.
Right.
So There are some people who, by the way, think they're not self-aware and they actually are. And there's some people who think they're super self-aware and they're actually not. So Emilia and I did some behind-the-scenes stuff where I named some names, and she was like green, yellow, red. So
cue the first step for you, dear listener, per our intention of this episode. How do you and your partner grow together, not apart, based on self-awareness? So first of all, let's go to step number 1. What we did behind the scenes was applying the growth skittle, quote unquote, mentality, which is rating yourself green, yellow, red. So this is asking yourself the question, how self-aware am I? Okay.
Who is actually going to say I'm red?
I know. This is exactly what I want to call out.
And by the way, what does red mean? It depends on the room you're in.
Okay, so this is really great. So if we were to have the listeners sitting right next to us, I would be asking them, hey, Susie, how self-aware are you? Green is exceptionally self-aware. Yellow is, I'm kind of in the average.
If someone says red, that means they're super self-aware.
Here's the thing, though. But yeah, if I were to ask them that, though, their own rating, and then if we were to kind of draw up the metrics and the pillars that underpin self-awareness, we would actually have a delta. And that's what the research shows, right? 95% of people believe that they are self-aware. So Susie might rate herself a green, right? Let's say, for example, I'm really self-aware.
Paradox. If she rated herself a red, that means she actually is self-aware. Because if you rate yourself a red, it means you're self-aware that you're not self-aware.
Exactly. So this is the metacog that you and I do behind the scenes. Yes. But what I'm trying to convey for those listeners is first step is rate yourself. Because that's where, now listening to this study, you might actually adjust your self-rating for lack of better words. Exactly.
Of course you would. You're not going to say green after
You and I
this.
assume that. Yeah. You and I are assuming that. But let's say, okay, first question. Okay, where are you at? Green, yellow, or red? If you're listening to us, likely you're adjusting it because of the fact that we are calling this forward, calling this out. Now I want you to rate your partner, right? Let's say your partner is in the room. Nice. Let's say Susie and Joe. Joe's not here. I want you to rate Joe's level of self-awareness.
Nice.
Okay, green, yellow, red. You might say Joe has red. Right? He is not self-aware at all.
Again,
then we're going to swap seats.
I know. And I got to call this out. Love.
Yeah.
These surveys are brutal because who's going to tell their partner, hey, I think you're red? That's the problem. I just got to say this. Like, I feel like the world is so inaccurate. And this is why I love math and science. Because if you were to sit Susie and Joe down, which are metaphorical people, these aren't real people, Susie isn't going to mark red because Joe's going to flip out.
This is what I'm trying to convey.
Okay.
I have a couple in mind that's literally going through this right now. If Joe's in the room, she wouldn't mark red. In other words, she wouldn't be forthcoming with the level of self-awareness that she's experienced in their relationship.
Yeah.
Put Joe in the room, that's going to change her answer because she's fearful of how Joe would freak out.
Sweetheart, you just said the same thing. You said he's in the room, she would not mark him red, and then you said put him in the room, it's different. Take him out of the room.
That's what I meant.
Right? Okay.
Yep, thank you.
So if Joe is in the room, she's not going to mark red.
Yes.
Because she's going to be fearful of lashback and him knowing that she thinks he's
Correct.
a lug. But take him out of the room, she would say red if she knew he would never find out.
Exactly.
That's why I think I love science so much more than anecdotal horseshit.
Me too.
And because we could rate each other on this podcast, but this is a public medium. Are you going to be like, red?
Red.
Yeah, red with a big capital R. No. And also, are you going to rate me green? Because that means you're delusional. And you know what I mean? So here's what I want to make this practical. Why? You and I talked about the solution.
Yeah.
Ask yourself why. Who, what, when, where, why. The reason I can honestly say I am high self-awareness, statistically speaking, not as much as I want to be. All right, what I don't know is limitless, and what I do know is limited. But I'm on the higher end of statistical self-awareness for men, and I know you know that, and I am going to say that out loud. Now, why? Why? What matters is the fact that you ask questions. I showed you earlier today, my Remarkable has my most important questions, my daily MIQs. Mm-hmm. Journaling. Podcast episodes every day about self-awareness. Like, not every day. But my point is, who, what, when, where, and why. What you said introspection. Because honestly, I got to be real here. I don't really care about whether your partner thinks you're self-aware or not, because I don't think they know. What I do care about is how do we actually help our listeners improve their self-awareness? Because quite frankly, I do like that quote, you can only meet your partner as much as you've met yourself. And I think some people feel very lonely mentally, emotionally, and spiritually because their partner hasn't met themselves.
Yes. So that's what the principle of what we're saying with Susie and Joe is. Because what we find and the research supports is the fact that there's always a delta, meaning there's a gap between what someone thinks to themselves in a partnership. Like Joe in this instance thinks that he's a green. Susie experiences a red.
Yes.
And it's in that where relationship problems are having an issue.
Yes.
Because then, say for example,
why would you solve something that you didn't identify as a problem? Right?
So one person has my partner, like Susie's like sitting there like, no, Joe has a problem here. And Joe's like, I don't have a problem.
What do you think
They're
Joe
not going to
rates,
work on it.
What do you think Joe rates Susie in this hypothetical scenario?
He'll probably rate her lower.
Yellow.
Because of the fact that he doesn't want to admit that he has a problem.
That's why this is so dangerous.
Yes.
If I ask Emilia, green, yellow, or red, self-awareness. Honey.
For me or for you?
For you.
Oh. Inaccurate thinking?
Yes.
Statistically speaking, I'm a green.
Yes, agreed. This is why this is so hard.
Because no one thinks in statistical probabilities also.
Exactly. That's why I have trouble with
and this is
anecdotal
where
stuff.
The reference group comes in. It's like, okay, in comparison to Joe.
When I first met you, though, you didn't think it was high. And now you've learned over time that it is actually very high, statistically speaking. So, but I just, let's bring this back to tangible, and then I know we got to get out of here. So what you said, introspection is the number one most important thing for our listeners to to do frequently. I think introspection is asking and answering questions. Who, what, when, where, why? What would you say to someone, if someone out there listening wants to raise their self-awareness, give us the tangible way they actually do that.
So the reason why I wanted to bring Dr. Tasha's research into this episode in efforts to help enhance what we talked about was because she's breaking down self-awareness into 3 pillars that I think is digestible for most people. Number 1, the values that we have and how we engage with them throughout the entire world.
We've done episodes on core values.
Which we have.
Yep.
Thank goodness. So listen to those. That'll increase by nature of you contemplating.
Just type
your
in
values.
conscious couples core values.
Second is your reactions. So we've done episodes on emotions, and that is in the quote unquote category of reactions. So let's say, for example,
overreactions.
Or overreaction, underreactions, whatever that is, right? How your partner or you are experiencing something, and then how you react to that.
Well, I'm very self-aware that I overreact to this anecdotal nonsense of
perfect. That's
of people's subjective. I think you're green. It's like, well, I think you're wrong. That's great. Go ahead.
What unconscious biases are in what you think? Right? Like
there's 300 biases.
Right.
So.
Okay, and then the third one, that is the impact. So the impact is Alan aware of how that reaction to that is impacting me. Mm-hmm. Those are the 3 pillars: values, reactions, and impact. Most people aren't actually aware of what their values are, how they engage upon them in their life. Sure as hell aren't necessarily thinking and introspecting, asking, why did I react that way? Mm-hmm. Why did I feel so much tension in my body when my partner said that? Or why did he get so upset over that? Why did he freak out over that one thing that I said? Something's going on there, right? Like, I think it's like looking at this from a lens of science.
Case, that would be others awareness, not just self-awareness. Because I think self-awareness is, why did I react that way?
What did I contribute?
Yeah, that's the impact.
Potentially,
right,
to why someone reacted that way.
Yeah.
What could be on the docket of, was it the tonality that I used? Was it what I said? Was it how I said it? That's where the self-awareness bucket comes in. And then the impact is where the others awareness comes in. But at the end of the day, all of those 3, if you're asking why or what elements did I push into this equation, that is inherently going to increase your skill of introspection. And why did you push that element? What did you need? What did you want to get out of that? Like, all of that. That's why Socratic questioning, which is consistently asking why, like the 7 downward layer why, is so powerful, because it ultimately gets down to what is not the motivation that you want to tell yourself of why you're doing something.
If your parts and your protectors don't stop you. I've done the 7 whys so many times with clients, dozens. I won't say hundreds, dozens, probably 100. There's always a time where they go back.
Of course.
They won't go deeper. And you reach a limit, and then you go, no, what was that? Why did you go back up? I want to go to the next one, because there's trauma there, typically. or deep emotional pain.
Yes, and unless they feel psychologically safe, they will not go to the deepest part, the sand.
Which is exactly why when you ask people around you for 360-degree feedback, you're getting their perspective, but not the truth. And that's why you have to be very careful. You really do. It's a minefield of misinformation when you ask your partner or your friends, "Oh, I think you're great," or "You're the worst." Like, none of that is accurate. There's so much in the middle. Like, be careful who you ask. That's all I'm saying. I also want to jump in here.
I want to add, be careful who you ask, because of the fact that how much are they grounded in rationality, objective reality, and actual, like, truthful based seeking of data.
I know. I would love to do an episode on rationality. I
Same.
am biased in this. Okay. I think rationality is the most important meta skill on planet Earth.
It's extremely uncommon. It's uncommon. And
I think it's the most important.
It's one of the most
If you can't
critical.
do deductive reasoning and logical thinking, you can't have a mental map that's accurate. And then I'm going to be like, "You're not self-aware." And I'm just going to start like injecting inaccuracy. Okay, so I want to let our listeners know. So if you or your partner want to increase your self-awareness, we have a specific program for this. It's called Hybrid Relationship Talks Coaching. So I am currently coaching the male in the relationship. She's coaching the female in the relationship once per month. And then we have 2 sessions each month where all 4 of us are in a room together. You want to talk about the best way to increase self-awareness? I didn't realize she thought that. I didn't realize. It's unbelievable. So Hybrid Relationship Talks Coaching, there's very little risk. It's pay as you play, no long-term contract. It is unbelievable. Of all of the things that I have seen done in my 11 years in this self-improvement, personal growth, personal development industry, Hybrid Relationship Talks Coaching is the most powerful. There's nothing more powerful than Emilia one-on-one with one client, your partner, me one-on-one with you, and then us cross-pollinating the information. It's unreal what happens.
Yeah.
I'm seeing drastic transformation in our clients that are doing hybrid. So if you want to learn more about that, reach out to us immediately. First one is free. Link will be in the show notes.
So one of the things to kind of round out this episode is when you are someone who has listened to this episode and you've decided to commit yourself to practicing more introspection by asking the question why, right? Whether it be in the values, the reactions, or the impact, you're going to be someone who, in contrast to your peers, has increased, obviously, over time, how happy you are, decreased the stress levels that you have, decrease the depression that you are predisposed to, as well as anxiety. You will increase the levels of control that you have over your life. And ultimately, you will be more happy in your job and in your relationship, which that then translates into better decision-making and ultimately a more powerful and robust decision-making when it comes to finances. Yeah. So when we first started and said that this is a meta skill, it's the skill underneath all the other things. This is such a huge leverage point. So if you and your partner want to join us at our next Relationship Talks coaching event, which will be on the 15th of January, this is where the finances. So what we're going to be talking about is how to align with your partner on finances. How do you do that if you don't have self-awareness about how your reactions are to money, how and where your money wounds are?
What's your relationship with money?
You simply can't. So we're going to develop a systems-based approach to that to help you and your partner actually finally align on finances, and working on this self-awareness skill will help make that even more meaningful. So join us in that. The link to register, it's a free event, obviously. It's going to be in the show notes. So please do not miss out on that. That will be so much fun, because so many couples end up fighting over finances when there's so many different layers about that they really just don't need to fight about.
And I've been harping on this a lot in 2026. I believe this more than ever. The people you spend time with matters more than anything else, other than self-belief. But your self-belief is impacted by the people you spend time with. If nothing else, get around other conscious couples. I used to believe that people could be successful by changing their habits and stuff like that. I actually don't think you're going to change your habits. Obviously you can, but I don't see it. I don't see it happening. I have 4-5 sub-communities in private WhatsApp groups, over 250 people love. You should see my fitness group right now. Everybody's on fucking fire in there.
Hell yeah.
But it's not because of they're great. it's because we're all motivating each other. So relationship talks, coaching, conscious couples, community. We have a private WhatsApp group and the relationship talks events. Just get around more next level people, get around more conscious couples in 2026. It will change your life. It will rub off on you. If you hang out with shit, you smell like shit, as your dad taught you growing up.
Yes.
Okay. Anything you want to add before we get out of here?
No.
Okay. Good. All right, listeners. So before we get out of here, just assess and self-assess, green, yellow, or red for yourself and for your partner. If you want to share it with them, you can. Thank you again for listening. Part 2 is complete. And as always, it's not about you or me. It's about the we. We'll talk to you next time.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks for joining us for another episode of the Conscious Couples podcast. We love connecting with the Conscious Couples community, so please check the show notes to connect with us and say hello on social media.
If you and your partner resonated with this episode, please leave us a 5-star review at the link in the show notes and share this with someone you love. Until next time, it's not about you or me, it's about the we. We'll talk to you next time.